Welcome back for another video. I'm Eharbad, a free-to-play endgame player in Raid Shadow Legends. Today we're going to look at Dark Fae. I've got guides for every other Doom Tower boss, and I've been meaning to do this for at least the last 2 times Doom Tower Rotation 3 has swung round. So today I have a number of different team compositions to show you, and whilst they're not the most budget of all budget teams, we are going to base it around a champion every single player can get for free, Yakal. He is one of the best looking champions in the game in my opinion, and has a unique background which is epic. After his buff, he is actually a really solid champion, and I've shown him pre-buff carrying Doom Tower 3 Secret Room 12, 6-star void attack only. I've also shown him as a crowd control champion for Spider, making use of his irresistible 100% chance to freeze on an AoE basis when turn meter is above 75%. So here we're going to show a couple of auto comps for Dark Fae 120, all without using Allure, and only using one legendary in Yakal. Now, I have done variants of it. The only champion that is mandatory is Yakal. It does help to have a TM manipulator that has a speed aura, but even this is not mandatory. And then the other 4 champions around Yakal, they really need to be TM controllers. So I'm going to show a few variants using different champions and a few tweaks that you could make to increase the consistency. This pseudo budget team is not entirely 100%, and the different variants I'll show you are more or less consistent. The one right here is probably around 60 or 70% consistent. It's a quick run and DT boss farming uses no energy, so it's an acceptable start, I'd say. If you do have Allure, I'd recommend using her, and that single change will make this more like 90 to 95% consistent. The reality is Allure is fantastic at what she does, but you can still beat this boss and set up an auto comp that is reasonably consistent, even if you do not have her. So overall with Dark Fae, when you enter the boss phase, she will mirror your entire team and your exact stats, masteries and gearing. Furthermore, the mirrors will have all abilities off of cooldown. Consequently, it's imperative we start the boss phase with all our key abilities off of cooldown and proceed to beat our mirror copies before they're able to do anything. Think of this as an arena battle where we want to nuke them before they nuke us. As we are the attacker, we start with the initiative. This is critical to ensure we consistently win. You can either start with TM manipulation or straight out nuke your mirrors. I prefer the latter and ensure Yakal is the fastest on my team with his A3 nuke off of cooldown. We use Whirlwind of Death to leap ahead of the rest. If you run another champion faster than your nuker, that champion will need to be a TM manipulator with the skill off of cooldown. For instance, Deacon, Lysandra, or even the recent fusion Morrigan. Along with Yakal, we'll bring 4 TM manipulators. And since Yakal brings both 100% TM steal and decreased speed, we can bring any TM manipulators we want. Obviously Allure will be great if you have her, otherwise Armiger, Coldheart, Royal Guard, Deacon, Lysandra, Morrigan, Visix, Skimfoss, Sylar, Grohack, all great options, amongst others. There are a lot of champions that could be used here. We do need around 350 accuracy to consistently debuff the boss, which includes our TM controllers. Meanwhile, the boss runs at 250 speed. So if you can run your champions on the quicker side, it will be advisable to be able to keep on top of the turn meter. That said, in many of my compositions, besides a handful of fast champions, the rest are around 215 to 220, so hardly that rapid. I do believe I would improve the consistency if I sped everyone up, but I'm trying to use the same builds I use in other content and to avoid the need for you guys to waste silver regearing for different content. So if we can find a way to make it work, I would rather sacrifice a small amount of consistency given that this is a 0 cost boss and ensure the builds work holistically. Let's jump into the run. We'll show a couple of runs in totality, and I'll also throw in a few screenshots with various teams that I've used throughout the way that do work, but maybe the consistency isn't so great. So we'll start with this one here, which is using 3 faster champions. We've got Skimfoss, Deacon, and Yakal on the faster side. And then we have a Royal Guard and Cold Heart, both running a bit slower, giving us that enemy max HP to ensure that the run is that bit quicker. We're doing good damage on the boss. Initially, Deacon is the fastest, but from Whirlwind of Death, Yakal will jump ahead. I've also found that Skimfoss is actually really, really good in terms of increasing the consistency on this boss. The ability that he has to bring that decrease attack is really helpful in terms of surviving if we do end up in a situation where Dark Fae takes a turn, which without Allure, it's going to happen. Like, we can't quite keep that turn meter down 100% of the time. So having that decrease attack really helps. So in this particular composition, Yakal is bringing the TM Steel, the nuke for the main wave, and that decreased speed. We do have Royal Guard also bringing decreased speed, but it's not mandatory. He's mostly there because he does a good amount of TM on the A3, but also has that enemy max HP on the A2. We then have Deacon to give us a bit of turn meter and also to reduce turn meter on the boss. Does also bring decreased defense, which is handy on the boss, but again, not entirely mandatory as we have the decreased defense coming from Royal Guard. Skimfoss here bringing good TM control, actually another champion with decreased speed. Again, there are different ways of kind of pairing these champions up in different compositions, but we do need to bring that decreased speed from someone. Yakal is helpful because he does bring it, but Yakal could be Herndig, for instance, or Growhack, both of which who can do the AoE clears and also bring TM control. Again, I'm showing Yakal because we will get him for free, so he's an accessible champion for everyone to use. You can see that in this particular fight, Dark Fae has taken turns twice, and we are able to survive and keep on fighting, partly because we got the leech from Deacon and we got the decreased attack from Skimfoss. The combination of those really do help. And there we have it. We have won the battle, 2 minutes 28, not the fastest of runs, but not too bad either. We'll run it one more time with this composition, then we'll run a couple of alternatives. You can see on the first wave, we do open with our AoE nuke. We open with the decreased defense. We have the AoE nuke from Yakal coming in second to make sure we get some kills. We do need to get Yakal to have 3 kills throughout the first 2 waves to trigger the maximum speed increase of Whirlwind of Death. That will allow him to leapfrog Deacon and also go that bit faster against the boss, which will help us keep on top of the turn meter. Then in wave 2, mostly people are just using A1s. That way we make sure we get all of our skills back off cooldown. Yakal is then able to nuke us in the beginning of wave 3 against the boss, so our entire mirrors are killed by Yakal, and then we're looking to TM control on a cycle with all of the other champions. We have multiple TM drops, and we're delaying the TM drop on that first wave, on the first cycle rather, of abilities. On, I believe it's Cold Heart who we're delaying on, but we'll check in the preset. We want to have a slight offset. We have 300% TM drops in this team. We have Skimfoss, Yakal, and Cold Heart. And I think if you don't have Allure, you need at least 3, if not 4, full TM drops. And then the other champions also need to be able to provide good TM control. Again, we could make this more consistent and make our lives a bit easier if we ran more of the champions closer to the boss's natural speed and were able to cycle that bit faster. But in this particular instance, I've got Cold Heart and Royal Guard on the slower side. They're still quite quick, around sort of 210 to 225, if I remember correctly. But then the other 3 after, so Yakal is at 240 something and then gets 18 speed from Whirlwind of Death. Deacon is around, I think, 248 and Skimfoss 251. There's around those speeds. We'll double check in the builds after. But the general premise here is that you do need at least 2 or 3 champions on the faster side. Now, we'd probably be able to get away with slower speeds if we had an AoE increased speed champion. So, if you had Lysandra instead of Deacon, you'd be in a much better position. Lysandra brings great TM control on both the A2 and the A3, including, the increased speed. You could also have someone like Necmo there, Morrigan, even Haikatoon if you really didn't have anyone else. There are other champions we can swap into all of these roles. Let's quickly go through the team setup. On round 1, Deacon is opening with decreased defense and has the A3 turned off. On round 2, I'm allowing Deacon to use the decreased defense whenever it comes up, but again, having the A3, the TM manipulation, turned off. And then Deacon will naturally use the time compression whenever it's available. You can override it and force it to be the first choice on the boss stage if you so wish, but the default AI will be to do that anyway. Yakal, we are allowing him to use all of his abilities on the first wave. I've changed these team configs so many times. You could open with the A3 if you want to force that. It doesn't really matter as long as you're getting the kills somehow. I would say let's open with the A3 would be better. And then in the second round, I'm only having Yakal do A1s. And then in the third phase, I want him to open with the A3, make sure we nuke the entire our entire equivalents in that first cycle. Then Cold Heart, we have Heartseeker turned off in round 1. Ordinarily, I'd actually turn off the A2 as well in round 1, and then have the A2 as the only kind of AoE ability I'll use in the second wave. Heartseeker turned off in both. And then in round 3, this Cold Heart is in fact a reflex Cold Heart, so having the A2 turned off makes perfect sense. Just be alternating between Flurry of Arrows and Heartseeker. Then Skimfoss, I'm allowing him to use his A2 in round 1. Round 2, we're just using the A1s. And then in round 3, we are opening with the decrease attacks. We're delaying Skimfoss's TM Steel, his A3, by 1 turn. And Cold Heart is using the A3 first. So like I said, as long as you have one of them offset by a turn, it's sensible to do it that way. Royal Guard, opening with the A1, then A1 only in both round 1 and 2, and then in round 3 is able to use his abilities as he chooses fit. Royal Guard will prioritize hamstring the A3 by default, and because it's a quad hit with 25%, effectively that's another full TM depletion once all 4 hits hit the same target. So you could say we've actually got 400% TM drops across the team. I'll just save those changes. So another team, if you don't have a speed lead or a Deacon, you can get away using another 100% TM drop champion. Ideally, that would be probably another Cold Heart. It could be another Royal Guard, but Cold Heart's built. So let me show you this team as an alternative. Again, we're making use of Skimfoss in this team, but again, as I mentioned, Skimfoss is not mandatory. No single champion in this is mandatory. I really want you guys to understand how we're building the team and what we're looking for, because there is no mandatory champion to get this going. I've given a few alternatives for Yakal, as I mentioned, Herndig, Brohack, really anyone that hits hard on an AoE basis and brings TM control is what you want. And then the other 4, we want them to be TM controllers as well. Now, ideally, if you have some of those TM controllers have enemy max HP hits, it will be faster. Like, the reality is these runs are going to be quicker if we're able to do significant damage to the boss. Brimstone will help. Phantom Touch will help, War Master, really whatever you're able to bring is going to help here. So once again, we've got that decreased attack on the boss, Skimfoss bringing that bit of utility. We're able to do, with the additional max enemy HP champion, we've now got 2 Cold Hearts and a Royal Guard in this team. with that additional damage, you can see we're ripping through the boss much quicker. Boss did get one turn, we were able to survive. There's always a slight risk because of the way the fears proc when you get the single mirror. That's really where the run can fail. Like if you aren't able to kill your Carl when your Carl is stolen, the mirror can kill your entire team. So that's kind of why it would fail if it does. But most of the time, you can see it runs pretty smoothly. Again, we'll go and have a look at the team presets here. So Skimfoss, in this variant, we're just using A1 in both round 1 and 2, and then we're allowing him to open with the TM Steel in round 3. Yakal doing whatever he wants in round 1. In round 2, we've actually got Blizzard Rider being permitted. We could turn that off. It doesn't really matter too much, and sure, we are opening on Glaciate in round 3, so we're able to kill our mirrors. Royal Guard, A1 bot in rounds 1 and 2, and then able to do what he wants in round 3. Cold Heart, disabled on round 1, allowed A2 on round 2, and then A2 disabled on round 3. And then other Cold Heart, the exact same thing, but should actually be opening on a delay on Heartseeker on round 3. That's how it should be. And we can now run this one more time so you guys can see with that small tweak. Now you might ask, why have I ended up setting up these presets, maybe not quite perfectly, because I've been running loads and loads of different swaps. And obviously each time you swap a champion out, the AI preset gets forgotten. So I've tried this with Armiger, I've tried this with Visix, I've tried it with Geomancer, I've tried lots of different combinations, and I'm going to cycle up some of those screenshots throughout this run. You're able to see some of the variations I've done. And really what I want to stress is that just there isn't any mandatory champion. Yakal is a great option because we get him for free, so I've built it around that. I was using Herndig previously, before I built Yakal to do this. Herndig was a fusion, so a lot of players will have that champion, but not everyone does. So I wanted to base it around Yakal because everyone will be able to get him. As mentioned, Royal Guards and Cold Hearts are the best for it because of, and actually you can see now how it will end up failing on this run. We unfortunately didn't kill the mirrored Yakal. We might just about scrape through, but I think we'll end up failing. And that's really the risk. But the run costs us nothing. It's pretty quick. So it's an acceptable risk, I would say. I think no one will worry too much if that does happen, even if you're trying to farm that boss. And like I said, if you do have the Allure, you can reduce that from happening. The additional TM control that Allure brings is sufficient to make that not a problem. I will quickly show this last variation here with both Armiger and Visix. It is not that quick, and it is not as consistent as the other teams, but I still want to show it to you guys. Now, it could be made more consistent. We could improve it. We would have to re-gear Visix to make that the case and make her more squishy and more really just a TM controller. The problem here is that Yakal is not able to kill Visix in that first hit, and that can cause problems. Beyond that, the TM control from this team is actually pretty strong. As you can see, we weren't able to kill Visix, but hopefully Visix can kill herself. That Armiger will go in and kill. We then have to deal with the Yakal because we didn't get a chance with the rest of our champions to put the TM control on Dark Fae. So we've ended up having the boss go twice before we even start our cycle. And that's kind of all because Visix is too tanky. Like I said, I could rebuild her, tweak the build, make her very low effective HP, and just make sure she has enough accuracy to be able to do the run. But I didn't want to tinker too much and waste more silver showing that as an alternative when I can just simply talk about it and also show at the same time one of the risks. If your champions are built too tanky, it becomes a problem. It's the same reason why I haven't shown the lead position being used by Necmo or Lady Kimmy, because my Necmo and my Lady Kimmy are built for Hydra and they're just too tanky. So I really want to be using champions in Dark Fae auto farming that are built pretty squishy, that aren't used in other endgame content that requires tanky builds. So really that aren't Hydra champions. Right, the only thing left to show are some builds and talk through kind of roughly how you go about building the champions and what kind of masteries I've got going. Again, there are many different ways to do it. You don't need to necessarily do one particular path. Ideally, having your Carl equivalent in Savage or Lethal would make it easier to kill your enemy team. But my Herndig, who I've been using for the last, like a year, is not in Savage. He's just built in Perception, Speed, and Accuracy sets. And that's fine. Like, you don't need to have your main nuker built in either Savage or Lethal. Right, so in terms of builds, as I mentioned, your Carl is built in Lethal, but is not necessary. Now, what is necessary is to have your Carl or your Herndig built fairly quickly. Ideally, doesn't need to be above 250 speed once Whirlwind of Death is taken into consideration. I would say if you can get around 240 or higher, that would be great. In this instance, I only need to get 2 kills to get above the speed threshold that I'm targeting. I don't necessarily need to rely on all 3, but obviously all 3 would be beneficial. 350 accuracy is what I would be targeting, but 330 is just about sufficient for it to be reasonably consistent. Obviously, if you can get 350, that would be great, and then as much damage as you possibly can. You do not need any effective HP. You can build these champions very squishy. Like I mentioned, Herndig was my other champion. Actually, it's an accuracy, perception, and crit damage, not speed set. We've got slightly higher crit damage here than on the Akal, but ultimately you're just trying to build as much damage as possible. Again, in that 240 to 250 speed that will go up a little bit higher. Again, 330 accuracy is what I have on this champion. I think most of my champions are between 330 and 350. If you can hit the 350 mark, it's obviously preferable, but 330 I generally find is good enough. In terms of the masteries, I have gone down to Helm Smasher on Yakal. I've also got Evil Eye. I think if I ever finish the masteries, I'll probably pick up Master Hexer. Everything else kind of doesn't really matter too much. I have mentioned Whirlwind of Death. This is pretty important. Yeah, Helm Smasher, Whirlwind of Death, and Evil Eye, I'd say, are the important ones to pick up. If we look at Herndig, we've got a very similar situation. We've got Whirlwind, Helm Smasher, and Evil Eye once more. Pretty similar masteries overall. We look at Skimforce, I've just built in triple perception, enough accuracy, and just over the boss's speed. Also 100% crit rate, very important for Skimforce to make sure he's actually getting the use out of his TM drops, similar to like an Allure or an Armiger. So we've got this A1 that has a chance to decrease speed. We are actually getting decreased speed from Yakal, so it's not so much of an issue in this fight. We then have this nice decrease attack on the A2, which is helpful in terms of increasing our consistency against the boss. And then we have the 3-turn cooldown, 100% chance to steal turn meter. Steals 100% of the target's turn meter if the attack is critical. And this is really, really strong ability. Allows Skimforce to be a part of this fight. 3-turn cooldown, extremely strong. You could definitely make an argument for running Skimforce in Reflex if you're able to hit the stats. Turning off the A2, as in you use the A2 as opener and then have it turned off. and you'll probably be able to cycle the A3 even more frequently and have an even higher chance of keeping that TM control in check. The Royal Guard I've shown here is my Relentless Royal Guard from Hydra. Doesn't need to be in Relentless. Obviously, it does help if you are able to. Built reasonably tanky, as I use this Royal Guard in Brutal Hydra, but is squishy enough that he's still able to be killed, which is the important part here. 350 accuracy, 220 speed. As I mentioned before, if you are able to build these damage dealers faster, closer to that 240 to 250 kind of area, you will find the TM control is easier to handle, but it's not mandatory. In terms of masteries, I've got War Master and I have Master Hexer. But you could say for this one, it probably would help to pick up Evil Eye if I'm going to use this Royal Guard in Dark Fae. Then we have the 2 Cold Hearts. Let's show the Reflex one first, which is 217 speed, 330 accuracy, and then 70% crit rate because Heartseeker has the extra 30% built in. Skills are obviously done. In terms of masteries, we've gone down to Giant Slayer. We've got the quad hit A1. Giant Slayer get good value there. We also have Evil Eye, which helps that a little bit more as well. Nothing else is particularly mandatory for this boss at all. Both Cold Hearts build very similar. The second one is in stun set, a little bit slower, same crit rate and similar accuracy. And then the masteries are basically identical as well. Another champion to show, Deacon, currently no ring or amulet. 258 speed, so your Carl will need all 3 kills to leapfrog Deacon. I actually couldn't remember what speed Deacon was running at. I thought it was probably a bit slower, more like 252, 255, but it isn't. It's 258. More accuracy than's required and very low effective HP. The skills are done, and in terms of masteries, we do have Evil Eye and we do have War Master. Probably would recommend getting Master Hexer as the next ability, which we'll just do now. Why not? Then Armiger, built in kind of offset pieces, not that fast at 230, 100% crit rate, enough accuracy, and then everything else very squishy. Probably would help if I built him a bit faster. Like I said, closer to that 250 speed would make him more impactful. Visix is built with way too much effective HP, as I mentioned. I think this was because I was trying to use her for I was trying to do some Hydra content with her. So that's why she's ended up in this high effective HP build. And actually the accuracy is too low. So really not well suited to this content. I probably should have gone and checked her build before recording the video, but I didn't. So, it is what it is. And then Evil Eye and War Master. So obviously you could change the build yourself if you did want to use Visix. I'd recommend making her squishy, fast, and with enough accuracy, similar to the Armiger build, basically. Right then, that is it. I hope this has been a helpful video. It's quite long. If nothing else, it's been a long video. I'm still feeling pretty unwell, to be honest, so I apologise if it's been a bit less clear and coherent than the average boss guide video. My mind's kind of a bit of a head cold, so it's a bit foggy, and definitely been struggling in terms of clarity of thought. But anyway, that is what it is. Hopefully this video has been helpful. Hopefully if any of you guys haven't been able to beat Dark Fae during this cycle, we've got a couple of days left in which you can try and take some of the hints and tips that I've tried to spread throughout this video, and you'll get Dark Fae done, and also get Dark Fae on auto farm, because lethal is the best gear set in all of Doom Tower, and I highly recommend you farm it. So yeah, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now.